Hey, welcome back to Watch Candy. I have a really interesting episode for everyone today, and it's an episode that I've wanted to do for a little while now. Lately, it's come to my attention, or better yet, it hasn't come to my attention, how many incredible artists there are that draw mainly watches or create pieces that are mainly around watches. And so today is a little bit of a different episode. We're not going to be talking about watches specifically, but mainly a few key artists that I would really like to highlight that have watch related art that I think really need to be put out there a little bit more. Because as watch enthusiasts, how can we not support these creators that are doing incredible work with subject matter that we are incredibly passionate about? So I'm excited to get into this. I think we're all going to find this super fascinating. And yeah, let's get started. So the first artist I'd like to talk about is one you've probably seen before, at least on Instagram. He's Ben Lee. He does a lot of really detailed pieces. All his pieces are primarily markers and pen, and you'll notice that that gives his pieces a really unique depth to them. There's all sorts of different shades and lines and different things going on in each of his pieces. So you'll notice that a lot of them seem almost unfinished, but because he leaves in all of these reference lines, they actually create a whole other level of intrigue that I think is incredibly pretty and has obviously gotten him quite far. So he does all types of watches. Some of my favorite pieces he does are collages, so pieces with tons of different watches in them, but he also does just single watch pieces, or he'll often involve like cars or other bits of media that are kind of around watches. And what's really cool is that you can buy the originals. He sells originals, but he also sells prints too. So if you see some of his work that you really enjoy, then it's something that you can own. So the next artist or artists that I'd like to talk about are those who work for IFL watches. Now, you've definitely heard of IFL watches before. They do all sorts of hand-painted dials, which is what they're super known for, but a lot of people don't know that they also have actual art pieces and even 3D sculptures that are related to or straight up just made out of watches. That's not something I knew of until just recently, which is a shame because not only are the pieces super interesting, but IFL Watches is a pretty well-known company. So the fact that it took me this long to figure out that they have things other than just painted watches, but actual artwork, is really quite sad. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video in the first place, is because I feel like much more people not only will be appreciative of the work, but should at the very least know about it because it's art and watches go hand in hand. So aside from those who are painting on the dials, IFL Watches primarily has two artists. They have Katie Barnfield, and she does the two-dimensional hand-painted pieces, and then the 3D sculptures are made by Dan Tannenbaum. What I absolutely love about Katie's pieces is not only are they incredible works of art, just conceptually. Her style is so unique that you'll notice that they're very chaotic pieces because of the very splashy technique that she uses. And not only are these pieces just incredibly well made, but they're also painted on carbon fiber, which is not something I have ever even seen or heard of before, let alone something I would have thought of. You know, the kind that kind of gives that three-dimensional effect when you look at it. When seeing these pieces in person, which unfortunately I have not, but I would love to one day. But each piece will have the three-dimensional carbon fiber effect underneath each painted watch, which is insane. Not to mention that her subject matter is some of my favorite watches that have ever been made. Next with IFL Watches is the 3D artist Dan Tannenbaum, and his pieces are unique in a whole other way. Obviously they're three-dimensional, but my favorite piece of his is a parrot that's made from watch straps, which is such a clever idea. Never in a million years would I have looked at a watch strap and thought, oh yeah, a bunch of those together could look like feathers. So you'll see he uses watch straps, but also pieces of movement to create this face and beak on the parrot. as well as different colored straps to show the different colors of the parrot's feathers, which is unbelievable. And I think it was another stroke of genius to use the alligator grain leather on those straps. So you've got the big strap that takes the whole shape in a certain direction and adds a feathery effect, but with the big scales on each strap, it also adds another dimension of feathers, I guess you would say. The next artist I'd like to talk about is one that not a lot of people have heard of, at least in the watch space. She's mostly known for drawing jewelry. So the next artist is Estelle Lagarde. And Estelle has a really interesting story, and I highly recommend doing some more research of your own. She uses gouache paint and pencils, which adds a really interesting effect to her work. But of course, we're here to talk about the watches she's drawn, and oh my god, they are insane. The level of detail that she's gone to, especially there's one that has a canvas strap, and she's managed to capture every single little woven thread on the strap, which is insane. I can't even imagine how long this took her. She's been into jewelry and art her entire life, essentially, but she got her big start, her big break, when she did jewelry art for Van Cleef & Arpels. She also did watch art for them, and that's when she really started to add watches to her portfolio. She has her own painting company called Studio Lagarde, which is where she does most of her work out of, but she also has courses that you can take that are for beginners all the way to advanced artists, which she started in 2019, which is super cool. I love when those who have incredible talent are willing to share that talent and help the cycle of artists and art continue. She also started her own jewelry line in 2023. All right, last artist for today, we're going with Brian Brady. And Brian is a very unique contrast to the rest of the artists that we've looked at today. As opposed to highly detailed, highly intricate works of art, they have a very casual, illustrative feel to it that makes me feel almost nostalgic when I look at them, almost like drawings that you would see in a picture book about watches. And I mean that in the highest possible regard. These, while not technically complex, his drawings definitely have something about them that just bring joy. You just look at them and you feel cozy. While he's always loved illustration and drawing as well as watches, he really got his big start during the pandemic. That's when his pieces started to gain a little bit of traction on social media, and nowadays he does commission pieces. So that's what I've got for today. I think this is definitely gonna be a part one of a series because there's so many artists out there who create incredible works of art centered around watches that I would love to highlight. As I was making this video, I just realized that there was too many to fit in one video. So this is gonna be part one. Make sure you join Watch Candia by subscribing so you can get to part two. Like I said at the beginning, these artists all do incredible art, and I feel like they are all a little bit underappreciated, at least in the watch space. Some of them more so than others, but I just don't think there's enough content centered around watch art and highlighting and celebrating these artists for their incredible work. Yeah, so that's wrapping it up for today. If there are any artists that you want me to get to in part two, just drop it in the comments and I'll get to it. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good day. See you later.